SARC, and that will be delivered by Mr. Peter Story. Mr. Peter Story is basically uh, he is the chief of a party for private sector energy project being funded by USAID and being implemented by United Nations Industrial Development Organization. He's also the co-initiator and global coordinator for Private Financial Advisory Network. So, Peter, thank you so much for joining us from there. And I would like to hand over the mic to you now. You can have your presentation, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm hoping I'm sharing my screen.
Yes, you're visible, but your screen is not visible as yet.
Yes, Teams have unfortunately
there's an option, if you can see with the mic, there's an option of shared desktop.
I've got to share content. I think now I've got it.
Okay, wonderful.
Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So we can start. Thank you very much for inviting me to present to you this afternoon. Very pleased to be able to run through and perhaps take a slightly different angle from the rest of the sessions that you've been engaging this afternoon. And we're going to talk a little bit about financing. And I'm going to present to you the services of the Private Financing Advisory Network, which is a program, a global program, in fact, hosted by UNIDO and REAP. And we work as a project preparation facility to provide investment bank services to project developers of clean energy projects globally in developing countries, to help them prepare their projects for investment and actually facilitate investments into those projects for implementation. We're very active across the South Asian region, and we've just opened and launched a program, a dedicated country program in Pakistan, which is why I also have a number of other roles at the moment, heading up that particular program in Pakistan, which is sponsored and funded by USAID and called the Pakistan Private Sector Energy Project. But today I'm really going to walk through and tell you and present how we can help some of your members perhaps and some of the professionals in the room to help them get financing for their projects in the commercial biogas sector. I think the problem that we're facing, and indeed probably that you're facing and you're very sort of familiar with, is that there's a really a large supply of projects. You see this on the left-hand side of the slide here. Those projects are looking for funding. They have good ideas. They have good technologies, such as the biogas technology that we've just seen, and very interested to look at the live demonstration in the last minutes. That was really very fascinating for me. And on the other side of the picture, you have a large supply of capital that's looking for investment opportunities in the clean energy sector, but for a number of reasons not able to access those opportunities due to a lack of familiarity with the technology itself, due to some of the business plans and business models not really being in an investable state, not being bankable yet, and due to unrealistic expectations on both sides. And what PFAN does is to really push the developers towards the investment, push the investment towards the developers, and fill this gap that we've called the missing middle, to enable the two sides to communicate with each other and actually for money to flow to the projects, for projects to be implemented and go into operation. We've been doing this now for some time. In fact, we've been in operation since about 2006, 2008. and we've been doing it reasonably successfully. And you'll see some of our sort of data and KPIs on the screen here. Essentially, over the time that we've been in operation, we've looked at least 1,000 projects. We've currently got about 300 in the pipeline across the whole sort of clean energy spectrum and climate spectrum. And we've been successful in raising about $2 billion of funding in the meantime for those projects that we've worked with. And those projects, the ones that we've supported, are generating CO2 emission reductions, and we've helped establish about just over 2 gigawatts of clean capacity in the meantime. PFAN, as I mentioned earlier, is a global operation. We work through a network of highly specialized and highly experienced individuals and companies. In fact, about 160 of them across the globe. And I've just presented you here the network as it is today to give you an idea of where you work. Where we work as an organization. And you'll see that we do have significant capacity and capability in the South Asian region. And as I mentioned earlier, we also have a dedicated country operation in Pakistan. So, I think what I'd like to say here is that we would be able to serve in any of the companies, the professionals currently in the room today, I think, with dedicated people on the ground. The program is supported by donors. We are very fortunate in having our funding supplied by Sweden, Australia, the US, Norway, Japan. We also get funding from the Kigali Cooling Program. And in the past, we've also received funding from Canada. And this funding enables us to provide a free service. So the investment banking service that I mentioned earlier is provided free to the projects that we select to work with. And I'll come back in a little while to explain the selection criteria and exactly how this works. This is essentially the sort of the overview of the services that we provide. First of all, we actually originate the projects, we select them according to certain criteria. Once selected, we push them through a training and a capacity building methodology that has been really honed and refined over the last 10 or so years. And as those projects mature, we start showing them to investors, either through one-to-one introductions or through investor forums or through direct introductions. And at the end of the process, we're able usually or often to provide what we call tipping point technical assistance, which really is some grant funding that we can provide at the end of the program to relatively mature projects to really just push the companies and projects into financial close and help both the developers and the investors go into that closing situation and get the money they need. The criteria of the projects that we can work with, we are unique, I think, in this project preparation space in the sense that we provide our services to relatively small projects. So we will provide services to companies and projects looking for somewhere between 1 to 50 million US. And we can, in fact, also look at smaller projects, projects in the sub-million mark. We also look at larger projects, but really the sort of the 1 to 50 bracket is where we have our sweet spot. We are technology neutral, so we don't specify technology. What we're looking for are technologies that work in a specific application, and they can come from the south, they can come from the north, they can come from the developed countries, from the developing countries. As long as they're commercially viable in that particular situation. We look at both climate and clean energy technologies, so both at the mitigation and the adaptation areas. And in Pakistan particularly, we've identified a number of sectors that we're focusing on, and one of those sectors is in fact the biogas space in Pakistan specifically. The projects need to be commercially viable. We have to take a decision on that, but we are capable of working with very early stage projects. I think that's where we add the value. Obviously, we're looking for technically viable projects. We're looking for experienced management teams, a high development and gender impact. Obviously, the climate impact needs to be there. And generally, we're looking for projects that start small but have good growth potential. And if any of you are interested in applying for our support, I've provided here the web link for the application process. Just a quick overview of the sectors that we can work in. These provide you an overview of both the clean energy and also the climate sectors that we work in. We have done a lot of work in the bioenergy sectors, including biogas, and I'll provide a few examples of our work and our experience in a second. Just to briefly mention the Pakistan dedicated program that I've referenced a couple of times. This is funded by USAID, again delivered by PFAN, and PFAN is hosted by both UNIDO and REAP. This is a dedicated country program. It was launched earlier this year. We will run this for 4 years. We have a dedicated team on the ground in Islamabad and Karachi. We are building a network of advisors to support the projects that we work with in Pakistan, providing all of the PFAN services, so the origination service, the project development and the investment matchmaking service, as we've done in the other countries. And also in Pakistan, we're able to offer some very early stage SME acceleration to help startups essentially get off the ground and come into our pipeline at an earlier stage than would otherwise be the case. And as I say, we're building the network in Pakistan, currently 8 advisors that we've got on the ground in that country, complementing the 160 odd that we've got in other countries, and the 30 odd or nearly 40 that we've got in the South Asian region. A few examples of our work in the biogas sector space. This is a project that we supported in India. It started very small. In fact, we really helped it from an idea, from a basic concept to the present day, where it's processing about 40 tons of organic waste, producing 2 tons of bio-CNG. As we've just seen in the live demonstration, this CNG is actually being bottled for distribution through the cities that Radix works in. We helped them raise, I think, initially 200,000 and then a further 500,000. And we're currently helping them look for a further 10 to 12 million of expansion capital. So this is a project that we know very well in the meantime, and we've supported for a long time. And it's been a big success for us and indeed for the owners. This is a larger project in South Africa, Bio 2 Watt. It's a 4 megawatt commercial scale, and in fact it was the first commercial scale biogas plant developed in South Africa, in fact in the Southern Hemisphere as far as I'm aware, certainly on the African continent. It's unique. It's about 4 megawatts of electrical power, 4 megawatts, just under 4 megawatts of thermal power. The power is delivered to the grid and wheeled to BMW, who is a captive off-taker for the electricity power. We provided early stage support to this, late stage investment facilitation and tipping point technical assistance. The company raised about 12 million, 13 million of equity and debt. We helped with both of those facilities. The facility went into operation in around 2015. It's gone through a number of different scaling phases, and it's about to hit its full capacity, I think, as we speak. And it's based on a large cattle feedlot that's close by, neighboring to the actual plant facility. I know this conference, this event is about commercial scale, but just to mention that we've also had quite a lot of experience of working at the household level This is a company that we supported in Cambodia. Again, a small startup company. We helped them raise 200,000 initially, and then another 500,000 of equity, essentially to help them scale up or start up and scale up their operation. And they distribute household level biodigesters for clean cooking, essentially to rural households and small agricultural holders in Cambodia. And that company is also growing very rapidly at the moment and is proving to be a great success. What I thought would be useful for you this afternoon is just to sort of review what investors actually look for when they're making their investment decisions, and this I thought might help focus your attention on the key things to concentrate on in developing projects and bringing your companies to market. So the first thing is a really strong value proposition, in which you really identify why you're doing the project and what the profit motivation is, how sustainable the activity is. Obviously, ownership is key, clear ownership structures, and who is taking the economic benefit from a project or a company are also key considerations from an investor's point of view, because they need to be able to access those commercial streams. The thing that's probably most important is a really robust business model. And what that means in the biogas sector is having, on the one hand, a really very steady, reliable supply of input of waste substrate coming into your plant, knowing what that costs, knowing what the logistics are costing you to supply it to the plant, and knowing the calorific content of that substrate so that you can manage the aerobic biodigestion process accordingly. And it was interesting hearing some of the discussion earlier in the afternoon. I haven't listened to all of it by any means, unfortunately, but we've had very great challenges on some of the biogas projects that we've supported in the past with, firstly, the supply, the uniformity of supply, the cost of supply of substrate, the logistics angles of the supply of substrate. So all of these things are really key in considering investments into the biogas space for outside investors. And then, of course, understanding the cost structure, what the overhead is, what does it cost you to actually generate the gas, turn it into electricity if that's what you're doing, or bottle it if you're using the bottling approach, and then deliver it to your market, and what the offtake values are. So, what are you able to sell for, who are you selling to, and what are the prices that you're realizing for the gas, for the electricity if you're generating electricity and selling electricity from the gas, and for your fertilizer, your liquid and solid fertilizers, in the instance that you're also having those as significant revenue streams. And I think that's one of the advantages of biogas plants, is that you do have 2 or 3 very strong revenue streams. There's the gas production, electricity production if you have it, and then there's the fertilizer production, both liquid and solid, as we've heard, which can make the economic proposition quite attractive. Assumptions, it's clear, it's not good enough just thinking what these prices are. You have to verify them and have certainty around them. So verification of your assumptions is really important in talking to investors. Then, and we talked about this also earlier a little bit on the eligibility slide, the execution capability of the management team. So investors really look very closely at how capable the management are to deliver the plan. So they'll look at the track record, your experience, what you've done in the past, whether you have skin in the game, whether you're putting your own equity at stake, or whether you're looking for 100% financing. So all of those things come into consideration. And I think investors are increasingly looking for standardization. Standardization of procedures in your running and your operation of the plant, standardization of the inputs, standardization of the outputs, so that increases the security of the income streams and the confidence that they can have in your ability to manage the whole operation and deliver the plan accordingly. Risk, of course, is a key aspect, and investors, and indeed we PFAN, look at that very, very closely to help understand what the risks are, where the exposures are, and how they can be mitigated, and then to stress test those risks accordingly through various scenarios. I think, having a realistic capital structure is vital. We see lots of companies, lots of project developers come to market with unrealistic expectations. I mentioned this earlier as well, as to what the value of their own contribution is. This leads to a lot of frustration on the investor side, because if the developers are looking for valuations which are too high, you're not going to get to deals. And on the same hand, if investors are looking for valuations which are too low, then deals are not going to happen. So the whole aspect and question of valuation is key. And this is one of the areas that PFAN really also works to support its companies and projects to get to a realistic valuation which is fair for the developer and acceptable also for the investor. Ultimately, what investors are looking for is a commensurate return on the risk that they take. They're looking for a clear exit if they're investing equity, and they're looking for strong repayment flows if they're investing debt. All very obvious, I think, but it needs saying. These are the things that PFAN can help you with. As I mentioned, we've had a long experience and lots of experience working in the biogas sector, and I think we'd be really delighted to engage with the companies and professionals in this room to see how we might be able to help you raise funding for the projects that you're looking at, whether those projects be in the private sector or more in the public sector, or whether they be public-private partnerships. And some of the team members from Pakistan, I think, are with me on the call this afternoon. Ghazil Jabbar is here. He is the Deputy Chief of Party and the head of origination for the Pakistan program. And he would be delighted to talk to anybody from Pakistan. I would be delighted to talk to anybody from anywhere else in the South Asian region, or indeed anywhere else, about how we might be able to help raise funding for your biogas project. I'll finish there and hand back to you. Thank you very much for listening to me. And of course, I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Peter, for this wonderful presentation, and specifically acquainting everyone about this PFAN and also this private sector energy project of USAID. So basically, now we'll move forward with the questionnaire session. So we are having with us our Honorable Director, SARC Energy Center. So I think the first question will be from his side. And then once we're done with the questionnaire session, we'll be having this a group photo again of all the participants, and then we can have this valedictory or closing note from our Honorable Director from SARC Energy Center. So I will next voice you'll be hearing is from our Honorable Director, Dr. Nawaz Beg. Sir, please go ahead.
Thank you, Peter. Hope I am audible. Thank you very much for a wonderful session you had. Ultimately, this is the deciding factor is the availability of the funding. Knowledge is there, funding agencies are there, and wonderfully you have presented that you are here to bridge the gap between the funders and the knowledge, the professionals. In your selection criteria, you mentioned various, parameters. But you did not indicate any financial strength of the project developers or the team of the professionals. Hope it is so. And can you explain how the project developer, is it a financial strength of the project developer should be for enabling you to fund the projects? Should there be having some financial already equity in the equity form, or you can fund 100% from different, funders? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Dr. Ahmad. I mean, in essence, we're open to both approaches. And we recognize that there are good initiatives, good projects and good companies out there that do require very high levels of financing, up to 100% of financing. I think realistically, of course, investors are looking for, and particularly equity investors are looking for opportunities where the developer has some skin in the game, as we say. So where there is some equity investment already made or will be made in the future. That can be in the form of sweat equity. And we don't necessarily need to see very high levels of contribution from the developer. But I think that comes again back to the question of valuation. If you've got a project, just for the sake of example, where you're looking for a $10 million investment, and your own investment into that at the beginning was, let's just say $10,000, but you're looking for a 70% or a majority stake in the end game, that's going to be an unrealistic expectation, obviously. And again, but I think this is part of the value that an organization like PFAN can bring to help work with the company owner, the project owner, and the investors to get towards a valuation that is realistic and acceptable for both sides. Obviously, developers want the higher valuation as possible, and investors want a lower valuation because they make more money that way. And our job is to really mitigate and to mediate that negotiation to ensure that a deal happens where it's possible. I hope that's answered somewhat your question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. I think that addresses the question. Okay, so the next question, any other questions from the participants? Yes. So I just want to okay, so we have one question from Mr. Veera Singh. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peter, enlightening the situation of biogas program in Pakistan. In your experience in the Pakistan, will you be able to recommend biogas technology as a feasible technology for the SAARC region? Especially, I am coming from Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka is now looking forward to be an organic country, organic agriculture country. And I think we are trying to suggest biogas as a viable technology to produce fertilizers. So we are very particularly interested about that part, whether you are convinced with your experience in Pakistan to recommend biogas technology as a viable technology for the other countries of the region. If your recommendation is there, I think that is very positive for our country to think about the future programs.
Well, I need to perhaps, thank you for the question. I need to perhaps just clarify, we are still at the beginning of our journey in Pakistan, and we haven't yet done biogas projects in Pakistan. We have a number of other projects in our pipeline in Pakistan. The biogas projects we've done have been in other countries. I am not a technology expert. I'm a banker, as you've probably gathered, which means I know a lot about not very much at all. That's the way we are. I don't think it's PFAN's role specifically to recommend technologies, if that was your question, but what specific technology providers. I think what we can say from our observation is that commercially biogas projects can be extremely interesting. They can be a commercially viable solution to generate clean energy and provide alternative sources of both electrical and thermal energy, while also providing a very strong revenue stream and an alternative source of organic fertilizer, both liquid and solid fertilizer. And we've seen this, I think, in all of the projects that we've worked in other countries. And some of them also in the South Asian region. So we've worked in Bangladesh and Nepal in biogas, for instance, that I can think of. We've had this sort of experience. We can put you in touch with technology providers that we've worked with, but if that was your question, but we don't view it as our job to actually recommend technology providers per se. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes,
You have answered it. But if you
so
can,
next question is from I can take from Mr. Chandra, Ms. Chandra.
Hello, thank you very much. Thank you so much, Dr. Peter, for your valuable insight and presentation on your financial side. Actually, this is my question is actually that do we need to or something related to one of my colleagues from Sri Lanka earlier, Professor Veerasinghe. Now this is our in Sri Lanka, as you all know, that we are in the U-turn of immediately switching to this organic farming very suddenly. So it's a high time for us to think of all these projects immediately and intensively as well. So being I'm a person, of course, I'm Dr. Chandra from I'm an academic Eastern University in the Eastern region from Sri Lanka. So me, I'm particularly, my major is in the biofertilizer, not in the biogas. I'm not that much technically effective. So in that case, if I want to totally get into this biofertilizer section due to my technological side, so do I need to definitely couple it with the biogas in case if I want to organize or produce such a project proposal for you to USAID in the eastern province of Sri Lanka, where we have all the resources, enough resources we have in the eastern region. So in that case, do I need to couple this with the biogas production, or can we go simply towards the biofertilizer production itself? Could you please tell me on this?
Thank you for that question. We have worked with projects and companies where there is no energy production in this space. What we need to be able to deploy our funding and support the projects that we work with is a climate angle. So we need to demonstrate that this is leading to a reduction in CO2, i.e. a mitigation angle, or that it's leading to an increase in resilience, i.e. an adaptation angle. If we have those components in the projects that we work with, then we can provide our support. So we don't always need the energy angle. Just to clarify, in the program that we're currently working with in Pakistan, because of the funding that we're receiving from USAID in that instance, we do need the energy angle. Thank you
for that. Thank you.
So now I think we are enough with some questions. So may I request all the participants if they can turn on their videos for a moment, and then so that we can have a sort of screenshot of all the participants, a group screenshot, and then we'll be having this closing note by our honorary director, Dr. Nawaz Beg. So everyone, kindly please, if you can switch on your videos for a moment. Thank you. So admin, can you take the screenshot of it, please?
Yes, sir, I'm taking it.
Yes.
Actually, it's one of the beautiful shots so far in all 5 days.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, I think we are done with it.
Yes.
So, okay, now I would like to invite our director, Sark Energy Center, Dr. Nawaz Beg, to deliver the closing remarks to formally close the session.
Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to be with you people as a director of the Energy Center, and on behalf of my team, especially Mr. Qureshi, I'm very thankful to all the participants, trainers, and the contributors for holding this very knowledgeable session. It can be hoped that this session will prove helpful in translating the knowledge into actions for exploitation of biomass resources in effective and environmental friendly manner. Special thanks go to Professor Arun Kumar, coordinator from Indian Institute of Technology, and our lead trainer, Professor Sanjeev Kumar, for their valuable contribution, enabling Sark Nadi Center conduct and conclude this session. Again, I'm very thankful to you all for active participation in this training session. Have a good time there and take care. Thank you very much again, you all.
So this was Dr. Nawaz Ahmed. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for this test session. So we'll be shortly also sending you the training certificates to all the participants, and hopefully you'll be receiving that within the next week. So thank you again. Thank you, everyone. And
Dr. Ali, can I also say something in the last?
Please, sure, sir. Sure, sir. Go
Yes,
ahead.
I will. Dear Dr. Nawaz Ahmed, the director of the Center of Sark Energy, and Dr. Mohammad Ali Qureshi, and my own colleague from IIT Roorkee, Sanjeev Kumar Pratham Arora, and our two, Ankush and Mohit and our Vineet. So I would like to first of all say thank you. It has been a very exciting experience for us to conduct a training with the 8 countries, with a 100 plus. In the beginning, it was in fact over 100. So it is today is about 600 plus, 60 plus or so. Very exciting experience. And then we also did a very exciting experience that in the remote area, we went to and shot having a live demonstration of a biogas plant. And it was a unique experience for us also, in the sense that we did for the laboratories many times, but not in the village where we had to go. I would say that it has been excellent arrangement moderated by Dr. Mohammad Ali Qureshi. In fact, he acted much more than beyond what a coordinator from a center can do. And he has been all the time very patient guy. And I would like to wish him all the best in his future. He's a young and he'd like to have very nice things. And participants have been extraordinarily excellent, I would like to say. Beside the discipline of muting themselves, which is very much required in the online training, has been excellent, and part in terms of attendance also has been a very good one. So I think with this, please download your all material from the MS team, which you can do for at least for a week or so. After that, we will, all those details, of course, we are submitting to Dr. Qureshi, Dr. Sark Center. But with this, on behalf of my all team, my colleagues from IIT Roorkee and other experts from industry, I would like to say thank you very much all of you this opportunity, and then we have a good interaction. And we look forward that we can have also some kind of fruitful research as a academic institution. We like to do some kind of research studies and joint collaboration in future. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Professor Arun Kumar. So one last thing I would say that for today's session, there will be no quiz, right? Yeah. And the other thing is that we will also be having this next upcoming training just for the participants, knowledge of participants, from September 13 to September 17. We'll be having this exclusive training on mini micro hydropower plants. It's also 5 days training. So we'll be shortly sending you the invites for this, and hopefully to get your active participation in this training as well. Right. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day. Take care. Thank you, Dr. Qureshi.